I'm really excited about this video. Stick around. It's full of a ton of information about how every single life experience you've had has affected your brain. I want to share with you some information that I've learned about how the brain works. Our brains are designed to adapt, to learn. And you consider a small child going into the kitchen and seeing his or her mom cooking or dad cooking, and reaches up to the stove, and before the parent realizes what's going on, that child touches the stove and it burns him. And all of a sudden he learns the stove is dangerous. His brain has made connections. It's a term called neuroplasticity. And the younger we are, the more moldable our brains are. That's the way they were designed to be. And the older we get, the more that slows down, but it does still change. Well, consider that child and touching the stove. This is a very good thing because it helps us to stay safe. And you can consider a child going into a classroom and being taught information, and the brain's just soaking it up and making all these connections. And then the next year takes those connections and the teacher builds upon it. And then when they get into college, there's all kinds of connections that have been made. And that's a good thing. It's knowledge built upon knowledge. But this can also be a very tricky thing, because maybe there's a parent who yells at their child, and that child thinks, I can never do anything right. I'm never good enough. And so they go into the next stage of life and they've developed this belief, this brain connection of I'm not good enough. And then maybe they struggle in school and they fail a grade and get held back, and they think, yep, it's true, that thing that I learned, I'm not good enough. And these things just snowball, and the brain makes connection after connection. This can get even more extreme. If you have a child watching, you may want to pause at this point. You can use your judgment. But maybe a child is sexually abused, and they've learned that when an adult touches them, it is a very dangerous situation. And so that child learns, I don't need to let adults touch me. And maybe that child grows up to be an adult or a teenager, and somebody comes up and puts their hand on her shoulder, and she logically knows I'm safe, but internally she cringes because the brain has learned that touch leads to danger. And I want you to also consider that people who have been through these situations, we can logically tell them, hey, that's not true. And they'll say, yes, I know, that's right. But internally, that feeling does not change. It doesn't matter how much logic you talk into that person. I sit in counseling sessions every single day, and when I hear a negative self-talk come out of somebody's mouth, I always pause and say, hey, hold on. Before we go any further, let's reword that. Because these messages that have been ingrained at young ages, they sit in there and the people don't even realize they're in there, and it affects their worldview. For instance, somebody will say, I'm so stupid. It happens all the time. I've said it. I'm sure you've said it, and we think, that's not a big deal. Where does that message, I'm so stupid, come from? It comes from past experiences, and it's the subconscious speaking something out that we don't even consciously think about. But it's the way that we look at things based on past experiences. The brain makes these connections. So there are extreme versions of this. For instance, trauma. I help people who have been through extremely traumatic experiences, from childhood sexual abuse to violent situations, and they have learned that when something reminds them of that situation, danger, 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 and they go into survival mode. And it happens all the time. And again, we can say, hey, you're okay, and they'll say, I know, but internally they don't feel okay. The words come out, the logic comes out, I know, but their brains are not in that place. They are operating in survival mode. So there are the extreme versions of that. But then there are also the things that we wouldn't necessarily consider out and outright traumas. For instance, parents mistreating their children, not showing them unconditional love, yelling at them all the time, making them feel as if they are failures. If a child, 3, 4, 5 years old, is taught, I'm a failure, and that's taught over and over again, even if it's not in word, it's in action every single day, they don't know to even question the thought, and it gets ingrained, and the brain makes the connections because it's been designed to learn. And then it goes into the next stage of life, and when it fails at something, the brain says, yep, that's true, I make more connections, and that just keeps going on and on and on until adulthood, and it's just a big jumbled mess of brain connections that are not healthy and bring the person down and lead to anxiety issues if they fear danger, or depression issues if they feel worthless, hopeless. And I want you to consider how your past experiences from childhood, messages that might have been ingrained that you've never even thought before, different things that you tell yourself in your mind without realizing it, where did those messages come from? And I want to encourage you that the brain can still be changed. There are techniques, there are experienced counselors that know how to work on these things. Don't try to fight these things on your own. Seek out professional help. It's okay to seek out counseling, to sit and talk with someone, to let them give you knowledge that they may have. But don't try to fight it on your own. If you want to learn more about some of those techniques, let me know. Feel free to put it in the comments. But this probably won't be my last video on self-talk or trauma. There's some more things that I may offer, that just more information. So anyway, if there's anything in this video that you would like me to speak more about, just let me know. And I thank you for your time.